the News Channel 5 network. This is OpenLine.
Well, good evening and welcome into OpenLine. I'm Chuck Long, glad to be along with you for the next hour. Tonight is one of my favorite nights. It's Ask an Expert, and we're talking to the attorney tonight. One of our favorites here at News Channel 5. Of course, we're talking about Kevin Kennedy from the Kennedy Law Firm. Kevin Kennedy is one of those guys that his knowledge gives us a lot of power. He's been doing this for over 35 years. He is just one of the smartest minds in the legal business. And the thing that I always say on OpenLine is this is your forum. So when you have one of those questions or comments that you want to call in about, this is the number that you call in on, 737-7587 here on OpenLine. Kevin Kennedy, always a pleasure to be here with you.
My pleasure to be with you, Chuck. I always look forward to this each and every month because you're a delight to work with. You know, the truth is, Chuck and I really do want to share with the questions that you have because some things are kind of bothering some people tonight. It always is. And so feel free to call in. We love to share with you. We always love, Chuck and I, when we're out, we love for you to come up and speak to us. Say we watch you on OpenLine. We hear that quite often. And so please feel free to call. Remember, a little advice goes a long ways, and some of those sleepless nights that you worry about this, we can try to help ease those through answering some of these questions. Chuck and I were talking before we went on the air. It really is our desire to try to talk to people. If you know something that can help someone, then golly, it pushes us to share. And that's what we're going to do here tonight.
Absolutely. And you know, Kevin, with everything that's going on in the world, and especially now, I mean, we've been seeing a lot of things that may have been tried in the public opinion, that court, a lot going on.
It is so true.
Oh my gosh. And what you see is that so many people just don't have any clue, any idea when it comes to the legal field.
The truth is, we are held to a standard. They say ignorance of the law is no excuse. Well, guess what? When you said, well, you violated this law. I didn't even know that was a law.
Right.
Well, there's about 10 million, even the lawyers. They say, well, I didn't know that was a law. And you know when you learn it? When they use it against you. And if they use it against you, you learn it one time, but that's a costly learning.
Absolutely.
So learn all you can. And even with our show, we talk about the theories. We may not know the specific code section, TCA, Tennessee Code Annotated, or USA Code, but we do know the general theories, and we can pretty close come with what is right and what is wrong. That's what a man's heart will say, and the law should support that.
Well, and Kevin, you know, I mentioned at the top of the show too, and it really does. I mean, it makes a big difference. You guys, you know, in the law business for over 35 years, you've been doing this for a long time. You handle so many, such a broad spectrum of cases. You've got experts in every area, and when I come on the show with you, that's one of the things that just always amazes me is that people call in that same broad spectrum.
It is,
and you understand. I mean, you've got the
well, you know, one of the first things, if we were all going to the law school tonight, they're going to teach you to identify the issue, so we can hear all night long. But there's really one or two issues. So with your training, you say, that's the issue. What is the law? Then after we know the law, what are our options? And you know what I always say? We always have options. They said, well, there's no answer to that. That's wrong. There is always an answer. And so we can move forward. And they said, well, what are we going to do? We always move forward. Proactive, creative approach, and the most skilled lawyers I ever have been associated with, they talk it, they discuss it, they plan it, they implement it.
And that's the way to do it. And you know, and as we always say too, the law is complicated. And so it helps to have the expert that understands all of these questions that people have.
And even like you and I have been talking, they'll ask a question, and then when you and I go through it and I'll respond, it even helps me to evaluate. And you said, hey, I never thought about that. And remember, if you use some of these techniques, they can help you in many areas of the law. You know, we've said on the show, loose lips sink ships. Somebody can say, well, I want you to do this. Well, guess what? They could be running a tape recorder on you, and then that's not in your best interest. They're gathering information against you. You've heard on this show, document. Put your things together. That is sophisticated thinking. Preparation protects you and your family.
And you know, and the key too is always making sure you have as much knowledge as you need before you proceed.
And how do you do that? You ask questions. And they say, well, this is kind of a silly question. There is no such thing as a silly question. And when I first got to be a lawyer, you know what they always said? Kevin, you asked all the questions. And I did all the, I got to tell you one, I'm in the law school and I have a study group, and it was great, and I loved it. That's how I trained under this. Well, we had the evidence test, and I trained with the smartest guy in the class. The guy knew everything. everything. Well, when we took the test, Kevin Kennedy topped the class. It's on my transcripts. And then he said, how did you do that? I said, when we were studying, I knew everything I knew, and then I learned everything you knew.
That's the way to do it. That is, and it's always an education for me, seriously, when I sit here next to you during this show, because I have learned so much about the law from sitting here. You've kind of, you've shared your knowledge, and it's really helped me. So I'm looking forward to this. Once again, if you're just tuning in, it is Ask an Expert. We are talking about the legal field. So if you have any of those questions, even comments, make sure you give us a call. Get online early. We get a lot of callers throughout the evening. We're here with you for almost an hour now, because a few minutes have already ticked by, but we're going right to the lines right now. Andrew is with us right now. Andrew, good evening. We're glad that you called in. And do you have a question or a comment for Kevin?
Yes. How do you know when you have a lien against your house? A lot of people are selling their houses and they find out they got 2 or 3 liens on them. Do the courts got to notify you?
Okay.
Thank you, Channel 5 and Mr. Kennedy.
Thank
I'll get off the line. Thank you.
Excellent. If you get sued in General Sessions Court for a credit card bill, for a little car accident or whatever, there's a judgment that goes down. Well, if you don't appeal that judgment, it becomes final. Once it's a final judgment, you can take that to the courthouse, file it. If there's any real estate in your name, there's a lien on that real estate. So you really don't have to, because they're going to maintain due process. You were notified when you were sued in General Sessions Court. So you say, well, I'm going to sell my house. I don't have a mortgage on it. When they go to close, the lawyers do a title opinion, and guess what pops up? That judgment from 6 years ago, and they have to renew it every so many years to keep it valid. But then you say, well, I can't get my $100,000 out of my home. Yes, you can, but they're going to take that judgment out first.
Okay.
Interesting.
Good to know. Absolutely. So, Andrew, thank you for that call. Going right back to the lines. And once again, if you have one of those questions or comments, I just encourage you, get online with us. We're here for you. Kevin's here for you. And I tell you, the best part about it, absolutely free. Free advice, and you can't get it any better than that. All right, so we're going right back to the lines. Linda is on the line with us. Good evening, Linda. Do you have a question or a comment for Kevin?
Well, my question, I've got a question, but the caller, before I ask my original question, that caller that you just had brought something up to me to ask first, because I heard Attorney Kennedy say that a lien on your home would have to be satisfied. I'm assuming unless it's over 6 years. Or can it be over 6 years, and when you sell your house, it still has to be paid?
Well, there's many statute limitations. They change those statutory requirements. Many times, I think it's about 10 years that they have to renew that judgment, and if it's renewed, then they can keep renewing. If they don't renew it, then you could say, hey, statute of limitations ran, you didn't collect on it, you didn't renew it, we're not paying you.
Okay, good to know.
And the other thing is, I'd like to point out, if you're buying real estate, don't close it without doing a title opinion, because you don't know, there could be an IRS lien on it. There can be anything. And you say, well, if you get the property, the liens go with the property. You're put on notice. That satisfies the due process. There's a theory in the law that we've got to notify you of these things somewhere along the line. And so you're learning today, go check that courthouse, make sure there's no liens on the property.
Now, I think Linda had another question because she heard that first one. So, Linda, if you want to go ahead, what is that other question that you had?
Okay, now I'm going to preface my statement with this question.
Okay.
What do you do if you have either a corrupt judge or a judge that just wants to get the case out of their face? Because, now here's what happened to me. I did a pro se case where I was claiming breach of contract on a online travel service that I paid to book me a airline ticket, and this was 5 weeks in advance of the departure date.
Yes.
Now, the day before the trip was to commence, I contacted the airline, and they told me there was no ticket for me.
Wow.
So I ended up having to pay almost 3 times the original ticket, the money that I paid the travel service, in order to not lose, the rest of the money I had invested in accommodations and stuff. So I took it to General Sessions, and this judge, who was filling in for another judge, I don't know what happened to him, she dismissed it, saying, well, you said something about they had canceled your ticket, but you don't have any evidence that they canceled it. Though I had all the evidence that there was, I had bought it, I had an itinerary, I had receipts, and I also had the receipt for the ticket I had to buy the day before the departure, and a copy of some phone records showing that I was on the line with this airline for 2 hours trying to find out what happened to my original ticket. She still dismissed it. So what can I do?
Well, here's the real world. You know, that you were scammed. Everybody knows you better check out who you're doing business with. Many times try to use your credit card because you can dispute that and said, we never received the services that we negotiated and contracted for. Number two, we can go to a judge and into this county or that county, and the judge rules against us for whatever reasons. He says, well, there's not enough evidence, or I believe this witness, or there's a discrepancy. In those circumstances, we appeal that case from General Sessions to Circuit Court, and you get a brand new judge. In the state of Tennessee, it's trial de novo. And what does that mean? You try it all over again with the circuit judge.
Wow. Again, great advice. Good to know. Linda, thank you so much for calling in this evening. Right back to the lines. We're going to Carrie right now. Carrie, thank you for calling in this evening. Do you have a question or a comment? Are you with us, Carrie?
Yes.
Oh, good. Go ahead.
Actually, my question is, it's in reference to medical malpractice.
All right.
I had a surgery on my foot where they replaced the joint.
Yes.
And come to find out they put the wrong size joint in. And not only that, when they put it in, they cut the bone off too short.
Oh, my.
It goes into the foot. So now it's putting stress on the rest of the foot. It's
yes,
breaking the bones in it. I've tried to get all of the big name lawyers in town to take it on, but of course it's against the VA, but I can't really get an answer as to why nobody's even willing to take the case. They never give you an answer.
Well, here's one of the things I'd like to say, and I'm so sorry to hear that. And, you know, even the viewing audience is hearing this, and they understand that doctors make mistakes and that they can cut too short some occasion. What we're confronted with is that the legislature has made it so hard to bring these cases against hospitals or governmental torts, and they may classify the VA as a governmental tort liability. So here's the problem. If you get a doctor, he's going to want money to testify and to give an opinion. You may say, I don't have that money, and the law firm may say, we don't have that money, or that the benefits at the end don't outweigh the amount of expense to go forward. So they just make an economic decision and say, we're not going to take that. What happened to you is terrible, sir, and I tell you just to keep on pursuing it till somebody tries to help you. And you know, the truth is, the squeaky door gets the oil. Even if I went and I had a bad DUI case, and I tried to hire somebody, and this one wouldn't take it, and that one wouldn't take it, that will not stop me. I will be persistent. It was Benjamin Franklin said, persistence will outwin every time. So I'm still listening to him 200 years later.
All right, well, that's good to know too. Carrie, we hope that helps. We're glad that you called in this evening. You know, Kevin, too, we hear so often, a lot of people, when they call in, things happen on either their property, something happens, something bad happens on their property, or something happens to them on someone else's property. When something like that happens, what's the first thing someone should do?
Well, the first thing is always try to document what the problem is. If we went, say, if there is a higher duty of care for a commercial business, you're what's known as an invitee. So if you went in there and there was a hidden defect, they had a hole in the floor and they just threw a rug over it and you stepped in, they should have told you, they were aware of it, or they should have been aware of it, and that creates liability on them. And then it gets down to the amount of damage. How bad were you hurt? And so that would be a good claim. Vast majority of people, if I just came to your house and I fell down, well, you're not automatically liable for me falling down. And I could have said it's assumption of the risk when I climb the ramp at your house. There's a whole lot of contributory negligence comes. They said, well, Kevin, you contributed to this accident because you had your sunglasses on and you couldn't see and it was kind of dark. All those factors come in. We have the law, we have the facts, and really that's when it gets in the gray area, because my facts are one way that witnesses with me, and the witnesses on the other side, they have the facts and they see it a separate way, and then that's why you go to a jury trial and they say who was the most credible, who is the most believable, and in that case they're going to rule.
Okay. All right, we're going back to the lines right now. Sergio is on the line with us. Sergio, we're glad that you've joined us this evening. Do you have a question or a comment for Kevin?
I have a question.
Good.
I was in a car accident where my car was totaled.
Yes, sir.
And I never had an accident in my life before, and I'm trying to find out, do I sue the other people because of what happened, or just let the insurance take care?
Okay, here's a great question. This is for everybody. Get a lawyer. The lawyer, when you go and talk to them, they can evaluate the liability. And just because the other guy says I'm not at fault, we don't have to take that. You can pursue, because if it is their fault, they are liable, and then you have to go. Well, some of the problems that lawyers get into, just like this, the lawyer knows how to find out, do they have insurance or not? And if they've got no insurance, then what are you going to get? And remember this, you can file a bankruptcy. You can have the greatest case in the world. That guy has no insurance. You can get a judgment. They can file bankruptcy, and there you go. Again, I always tell everybody, I had this conversation with a very sophisticated group today, and I told them if it was me, Chuck, my friend, I can advise him. Get a lawyer. Most of the initial consultations are free. Go in and get some advice and say this is what happened. But absolutely, unequivocally, you heard Kevin Kennedy say it. And the great thing in Tennessee, pray that we never lose it. We still have the contingency. You don't have to have any money up front in car wrecks. So you can come to us and we would take it on a third. That's standard in the industry. And then let myself and team go to work. Let our experience help you.
And that's the thing, your team, you've got specialty,
you got to have a team.
Yeah, in so many areas, and so that's so helpful. We've got folks on the line with us. We are glad that you called in this evening. We do need to take a short break, but when we come back, more on OpenLine. It certainly did. Come on back with us.